questions?
I heard when they're doing manga, the editors will tell the artists, okay, episode 3's come along, introduce the rival. Is that good advice?
You would know that more than me.
That sounds like editing to me.
Yeah,
Like
that's
an
the-
editor normally,
tell the artist.
yeah, an editor can be habitual line steppers.
Yes.
Manga studios are interesting too, because especially if you're talking about ones that are like in Japan, a lot of times they're run like businesses. You'll have 10 artists, you'll have like 5 writers, you'll have like 3 editors, and there'll be a schedule, and like basically there's always someone drawing, there's always someone writing, there's always someone editing.
Yeah.
And there's like whole formulas that go into that.
But I'm sure all
kind of
the
stuff.
top publishers do that. DC and Marvel, they always have the big meetings where they're talking
They have the
about,
retreats and they
yeah,
plan out the year.
Yeah, this is where we're gonna get, this guy's gonna pop up, blah, blah, blah. And that's the difference between self-publishing and that. You don't necessarily have someone standing over your shoulder telling you this villain has to show up in issue 3.
There's opportunity in being able to make your own decisions and not have to like come to a consensus with a group of like stakeholders and shareholders about like what you can do with this character.
You can
It's
kill
like,
everybody off.
Like
if
you can
want
kill
to.
off all the hood rats in
Yeah.
space if you want to and just start over.
I can't.
But you could if you wanted.
One thing that got me, because like I was sitting there looking at all these books, thinking to myself, man, I'm looking at all these artists and they're doing this and they're doing that, and I can't tell. One thing that got me, that surprised me, was when I found out about Marvel's bullpen and figuring out how many people actually come in on the page and actually help out on the page. That surprised me, because I was kind of like, wait a minute. You mean they aren't the only ones just sitting there breaking it down all the time, 24/7? It's like, no, they get help when they're doing that. And that kind of put me in a place of being like, okay, I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to put it out there. And whether it's this or that or whatever, it'll show through however it needs to, and we'll do what we got to do.
The bullpen guys were really awesome to work with, because they would we wouldn't even go back to the illustrators and make changes. Like we'd be like, dude, Spider-Man's leg is like 3 times longer than his other leg. And we would just mark it up and bring it over to the bullpen, and those guys could mimic anybody's style.
Yeah.
So you never knew in the issues how much was touched up. It'd be like, Mysterio's head looks weird. You should just bring it to the bullpen and have him fix it instead of shipping it back out to the original guys.
I'm a big Erik Larson fan. He's got a story about John Buscema erasing all of his heads on like his first issue and redrawing like every head on the whole, and like not even telling him, just redrew it and sent him off to the inker.
Nice.
I had a friend who was an inker, and I would hear stories about artists PO'd about what an inker did to their faces on their characters. Some artists, you'll be surprised how anal they are about certain things like that. Like, you inked his ear.
Yeah, so if you're collaborating with people, it's important to like not get hung up on
Because
on the little stuff.
You'll be like, it's my style. And it's like, no, but you brushed over the line work that I put, and stuff like that. So it is.
And that's another thing that makes self-publishing great. Nobody over your head talking about it. You did that wrong.
Yeah, it's
To
less
kinda get
people.
back, the only formula thing I use in writing is somebody give me this little wheel thing. It's called the hero's journey.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I follow. And that's just so I keep on track, that I'm just not like, I've just given people like 18 pages.
You're doing the whole Lost thing where you're just.
Yeah.
Oh, that,
Find you're looking for it.
I'm glad he said that, because when I was working on Hood Rats, I found that I had to pull my stuff back. Like you could get in a creative river where you're just going and going and going, and you go, wait a minute now, I got too much going on, and I got to pull back. It's kind of like he said, some things you just got to know where to cut it off and pull it back. Don't put too much frosting on the cake. It don't taste as good.
I mean, there's so many, I'm like, this is a hilarious joke. People are going to love this. And then, I would try to keep it. And I'm like, I'm changing the entire story because I think this is such a good joke that maybe nobody's even going to like. So, that's kind of the kill your darlings things. It's just, there's a sequence you put in or a word you put in that you think is going to be so cool, but you got to cut it. I mean, when you start writing comics, you don't, I mean, everybody in this room has read comics, done comics their whole life. When you actually start creating them, you don't realize how fast everything moves. So to tell a story in 20 pages is hard.
That goes back to me saying, don't worry about like how rendered your art is and stuff, because like if you're making art, that's one thing, but if you're making comics, it's more about the whole experience of how that comic affects a reader. And they're gonna spend 5 or 10 seconds on a panel, maybe. How long are you gonna spend drawing that? And that's actually something I struggle with, because I like to over render and over color. and you just have to be like, no, they're just it's one big piece, not these individual.
That was
That's I
pieces.
wish I learned earlier.
Yeah.
Ditto.
See, he could have
Ditto.
saved him time. But I remember Mark Brooks told me something like that on the name drop again. But he was like,
That's 3.
he said, dude, I ain't no comic artist. I'm a production artist. And I was like, man, that stuck with me because he said that's a whole different way of approaching it. Like as a comic artist, you can get real artsy fartsy, like, oh, so pretty, her hair. And Brooks was like, nah, you gotta be a production artist. You gotta get that done.
Page a
and,
day.
and on to the next. You don't have, nah. And you could get trapped in that world. I have a daughter that's an artist and I'm watching her trapped in that world. She's like, I just wanna do this all day. You know, and I'm just like, boo, you got a lot to do. You got to get that out the way and you got to move on. This is how I do hair. It's cool. And you pretty much what I found for me to do books to crank out pages, it's just a lot of techniques. You know, it's just a lot of things that helps me get through in and out of the page like we're talking about. How do I lay it out? How do I get this done? And you get a system. So you become systematic.
Yeah, process is key.
Yeah, you gotta get that. If you don't, you will struggle per page. You gotta have a system, because that's what it was. It was like, that page is awesome. Can you make the next one just as awesome? You know what I mean? And that was a struggle for me for years. Like, I love page 4 and 12. You know, it's like, you know, so it's like I was determined not to have that happen anymore. So I was like, page 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 22 have to look good. And the only way you can do that is you got to come up with a system that every time you crank that page out, you got a system that works the same way consistently, and that will help you with your flow. It'll help you get more books out, and your production work will get done faster because you got a system. It's like you go to work every day, clock in, you do the same job over time. It's a system. That's how you want to perform your art. You know, you want to kind of like have a systematic way of doing it.
Yeah, and if you're just starting out, you know, you might have to do 100 bad pages
Right.
before you're like in a place where you're doing consistent work on stuff. I know, like I do a lot of work that's not comics, and that's something I have a problem with is when I come back to it, it's like I'm rusty. It's like I
Right.
can tell I haven't been practicing, I haven't been making pages, and then you have to get back into your process again. So
Yeah, do a lot of design,
that's why I
too.
tell everybody like draw every day, even if it's just something small, just to keep your skills sharp.
Like, what was it one time? Every time I'm sitting there on the bus stop, I'll just sit there and start scribbling the craziest things. Somebody will come and look at me like, what the hell's your problem? You know?
What you drawing for?
I was like, I don't know. What you doing? You know? It's, like, what was it? Like, they said 10,000 drawings or something like that?
10,000 hour rule?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's 10,000 hour.
Anyway, just practice. Just put it down. And don't try to be like anybody else. Just put it down because it's going to come out your way.
Yeah.
And one day somebody will come out
Oh yeah,
there
that
and be
makes
like,
that's the thing I was gonna say too. Is like once you get into that production mindset, you'll quickly realize. Is the saying I like is that when you stop trying to create a style, that's when you'll find your own style.
That's what happened to me.
Like that's how you do it. You've just gotta just do it. You just gotta keep producing, keep making art, and eventually you'll see the things that make your art your art.
yeah.
And on that same note, that's where I come up with my ideas for Hood Rats and Throw. I was gonna say, like, I found the best way to find ideas is your life. Because guess what? You're the only one with it. So you automatically have a creative story that no one else has because it's yours. So that was a niche for me. Like, I know Hood Rats, you know what I'm saying, for real. And I know the life that I was living.
You know hood rats like how?
I know, but I'm just saying, like, it's different things that only pertain to you. So chances are, if you stay there, you got certain family members no one else has. Your uncle is insane. He's crazy. Every time he comes in the house, he's doing something. Take note of that. Become a watcher of life. Your life is the most incredible story that you will ever see and experience. Better than any movie. It could be a drama, it could be a horror movie. But your life is yours. So whatever you come up with, try to pull from your real life. I know you hear it all the time. It's kind of cliche, but it worked for me.
It's true. It's true though.
It worked for
It's
me.
absolutely true. Like write about what you know about. Write about stuff that's personal to you. Don't be afraid to like put yourself out there.
And I know we're in a realm now where, you know, community boards and everything, people will just come down on you like whatever. And that's the scary part, especially now. When you throw something up, if it doesn't look a certain way or if it doesn't act, you know, whatever, people will try to just crush you without even seeing you face to face. Just keep in mind those are the people that ain't doing anything. Other than sitting there talking about what you ain't.
Yeah,
you
people
know?
that critique
Yeah.
usually are the ones not
They're-
doing anything.
Don't even know how to critique. They're just saying.
What's the
"Sucks."
saying? People that don't do anything can always tell you how to do it.
That's for damn sure.
You definitely got to have a thick skin.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah,
You
that's
gotta,
super important.
or you'll be out of the game real quick. First person tell you that eye sucks. You can't be like that, because I went through that a lot. I had to draw boxes as faces for years because I couldn't draw faces till my friend called me on it. You know, he's like, dude. I was like, okay, I'll work on my faces. And then, for artists, I did hands, shoulders. I took the body and broke it down into individual parts and just mastered those things before I got good.